Hey there, hi there, ho there. I am Serena Hicks, and you are listening to The Serena Hicks Show, where we talk about love and money, all forms of love, self-love, neighborly love, love for your journey of entrepreneurship, love for the money you have, love for the debt you have, if you have any, love for your journey and experiences, learning how to make money, have money, steward money, donate money, receive money, love and money. That's it. We're going to talk about every intersection of and version of love and money. Welcome to the Love and Money Show. If you love it, tell a friend. I love you. I mean it. Let's go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Serena Hicks Show. This will be the shortest introduction ever because I have my friend and client, Katherine K. Brooks, and we're going to talk about mushrooms and Byron Katie and who knows what else. So I literally texted her and was like, we're just going to say hi and we're going to record. That's it. That's it. So this is the start of the episode. Welcome to the Serena Hicks Show. Hey, Brooks, Katherine Brooks, will you please introduce yourself, tell everyone where to find you and what you do, and then we can get into our Gab Fest.
Absolutely. Hello, I am a life coach. I have been in Serena's containers for nearly 2 years, since the summer of 22. So cool. And my coaching business is 3 years old, and I help men, but now a more expansive view of lots of different folks make their lives better.
Perfect. Where to find you?
Come hang out with me on Instagram. I'm at Kath Brooks, KATHBROOKS. And also send me a DM and say hi.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I want more of that. I had a friend who I was actually at school with who sent a message and she sent me a message and I've been to other schools with her and she was like, "Oh my God, I just heard your podcast with so and so and that was so fun." And it was like so fun. You guys talk to me. Talk to Kath Brooks. Talk to me. It was so fun to hear her feedback.
It is so
Okay.
fun.
Hi, let's talk about everything. I love how you introduce like mostly I coach men, but also totally open, and especially coming in from this Byron Katie, this last event, which she calls it the no body event. And then sort of in parentheses, it's like it's an event on non-duality. And I don't like that it's called no body. And in case anyone's confused, it's perfect, it's brilliant. But like if I got to do the marketing or branding, like the first thing we would do is a title change.
Oh, I actually thought it was all about body image stuff
I mean, me too. I was
because
like,
of that
sign
title.
me up. I bring, as a child of the 80s, all the crazy, all of the it's too fat, it's too thin, it's too old, it's too young, it's too fat here, it's too bad. So that's what no. And yes, because non-duality, if I could summarize it, you guys, it took me 2.5 days to get here. That's not true. But non-duality is effectively there's no downside except for what we're thinking and believing.
I love this. And it actually reminds me of something that I learned from you that I shared with a friend yesterday. And it feels like it's in line with this, though I've never named it non duality. And it's the idea that money, even if we're seeing it as, oh my gosh, I have this much debt, or holy shit, I don't have what I consider enough in my bank account, is still there to teach us something and show us something and illuminate something, and can offer us a radical perspective shift, often, in my experience, away from conditioning. And so, in this conversation with this friend yesterday, we were talking about debt, and I was saying how many lessons I have learned from debt that I've not learned in any other category of my life. And when we can see that bigger picture, and like you're saying, there's no downside to it, like it opens up a real embodied experience of these lessons, not like a lesson that you just read in a Byron Katie book.
We are fire. That's all there is. Yes, because there's what we know in our head, everybody, and I love books. I'm grateful there are books. I intend to write a book, like all books, all the things. There's what we know, but the experience. And I have used that language more in my business, and y'all cannot take it away from me. I will rage and rave about experiential events. There's what we know, but when you know better, you do better. Literally, in any realm that we are not 100% enlightened and developed in. And I love that I totally lost my train of thought here, but it's always an opportunity. And that's the other thing that I think is so interesting and fun in my world, in your world. If you're listening to this podcast, I strongly suspect we share a world. We want more than just accumulating things. We want to contribute to the human collective. We believe in community and love. Like, we're not just here to like collect a pile of cars or money or clients. Like, I mean, we're here for it, we'll have it, but that's not the goal. That's the lagging indicator. And that's where experiencing, there's no such thing as bad money. Experiencing cash is great, and credit is great too. And experiencing that we were socialized to demonize credit. That's for people who were irresponsible with their money, or that's for bad people. And I'll trace it all the way back. I know that you're familiar, but you guys, just here in dumb old United States, when enslaved people were set free, not with a stipend, not with a starter fund, immediately they were in debt, whether it was like, what do we call it? Sharecropping, indentured servants. It's all the same, but it's like immediately debt. And I think it's so fascinating that we still demonize. And I have to include myself in this because I have done that. And I have, and I know that you know this, Kay, but I'm like, let me just announce it to the whole wide world. Like, my business made all this money. And then I had this, we call it 2023 is known as the year of personal growth in my world. That is the label, and no one can take it away from me. But the year of personal growth was very expensive, and I'm using credit. And I felt so deeply ashamed. It's like that took months out of my year of personal growth. That is the whole calendar year of 2023, because I was thinking, and I love that I can say this now, and I'm so happy. I was thinking I shouldn't be here. I was thinking, you guys, the same thoughts show up at every tax bracket. The idea was, it was like, it used to be when I was young, I shouldn't be here because I'm too smart to not have more money, or insert whatever it was, the same thoughts. We live in a friendly universe, they show up again and again until we don't just quote in our brain know, but we have the experience of knowing. And I'm like, oh, I will have debt in my life probably until the day I die, whether it's a house, a car, a boat, a yacht rental, a credit card payment, irrelevant. And I will definitely have more the more I resist. And the more that I'm like, yeah, this is my choice. And like the example that I want to offer, it's different but related, you guys. My understanding, I have not studied him deeply, but I remember reading that like Gandhi died with $1 to his name. And I thought it was so fascinating, but Gandhi was like, no, I rely on wealthy people to fund my work, the end. And my point being, I like the face you made. I think most of us, I will admit myself included, are like, I don't want to die with only $1 to my name. I want to leave something to my family, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, he just wasn't attached to the false narrative that better people leave money or things behind to help their loved ones. That's a story that we tell. And he was not burdened by that story. So fun.
It's so hard to recognize that that's a story that we're attached to until we hear something like that.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I have one personal example that feels like the most potent version of this. I borrowed money from some friends to make a business investment, committed to a repayment date that I did not make. And when I reached out to them to let them know that I needed more time for the repayment, I had a lot of shame come up. And I was on the couch with a friend talking it through because shame cannot live when it is witnessed. And the responses that I got from the friends were very loving and very understanding. And the friend who I was babbling on to said, So, what does this say to you now about your beliefs? What has changed here now that you've got these loving responses? And it was the moment that made me crack and burst into tears, because what it really showed me was that I can be imperfect
Mhm.
and still be loved deeply.
And I would question imperfection because the assumption is I said, so for everyone following, I'm making this up, but I said I would pay them back $1,000 on May 1st. And so you're saying imperfection is calling to say, I can't pay the $1,000 on May 1st. And I want to know, do you think you know better than reality? Can you really know if anything went wrong? You know what I mean? And I'm with you. Like, these are the stories we tell ourselves, but it's like, we can't know how perfect for them, for you. We can't even begin to trace the ripple out effect of the perfection of your
Exactly.
uh, not doing what you thought, what you planned, what you intended, what you promised.
And to me, in order to be loved, I needed to follow through on my commitments exactly as I stated them in
I'm
advance.
here to earn love all day. Yeah, I totally like it's what we do. And it's also, it's like that. Yes, that's being a good human. Again, like this community, we value and we want to contribute to the human collective. We're not like, haha, harm people, haha. Like that's not our vibe. And yet that is the invitation to be loved as you are imperfect, and then to even question, it feels imperfect to me. Honor that. But can I know that this is actually anything other than a blessing for everyone involved?
Even that's blowing my mind.
Okay, I have an example. I hope it's fun for you. So I'm borrowing this from Tony Robbins' lore from way back in the day, everybody. I remember he told a story because when I was very first getting into money mindset and energetics and sufficiency versus lack and abundance and like starting to stretch my head around it. The story was he was hella broke, whatever was happening, and he took himself out to dinner. He's like, I had $12 like to his whole name. And he saw a young man, like I think a child, take his mom out for dinner or lunch or whatever it was. And he was so impressed. It was so sweet that he bought the dinner like for the kid. Because anyways, for them, but like he was so moved by this kid's devotion to his mother and generosity that Tony spent like his last dime paying for his meal and their meal. But it was like, whatever. Like I walked out of there, didn't know I was going to pay rent, but also just was the right thing. And then he like literally goes home, and somebody he'd loaned money to a while ago and had asked for the money back, and the person, he'd given up on ever seeing the money again. And like that check is in the mail or his mailbox, figure it out, whichever one of them. But this person was beyond late and had been MIA on repaying this money. And yet suddenly here's this pile of cash with a, hey, sorry, 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 but here's your money. And it's like, oh, that was perfect timing. That was exactly when Tony was meant to receive that. And again, this was not a disgust. You may pay late. Like he just thought this friend will never pay me back. And like, that's just what's happening. And it's like, oh, how perfect that the friend wasn't able or willing or whatever the story was until the perfect moment. And
I love stories like that.
I will offer. I love it too, because I'm like, oh, right. And I had this experience. So back in my New York life, I remember I borrowed $10,000 from my grandmother to start a company that ultimately failed. And for those of you, I hope you all know, in 2008, I ended up filing a bankruptcy, but I borrowed 10,000 from my grandmother. It was like the equivalent of $10 million, as far as I'm concerned, to ask to borrow 10,000 from her. And she said yes. And foolishly, I thought that would be a sufficient enough to like start a business. Anyways, it was not. We learn. Anyways, I paid her back, so I filed bankruptcy in 2008. Then Bernie Madoff and the whole economy collapsed and blah, 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 blah. So I remember paying her back. And I remember when it was like, boom, there's the final penny, 10K plus $100 or whatever. And we laughed because she said, well, that was my best investment in 2008. And it hit me then. All of her money was in like retirement fund. And she said she lost like 40%, 40. So even though I had felt like audacious and all these things, I'm like, wait, I borrowed 10 and gave her back more than 10 and nothing else, zero comparison, nothing else in her portfolio was even comparable. Everything else, every other 10K piece was suddenly more like 6K. And we can't go back in time, but I just love that. It's like, maybe I should have asked for 100. Like, like neither of us knew at that time that the safest money was the money she was loaning me and I was feeling shame about and she was worried about too. Neither of us knew. So much unlearning is involved.
And I was just thinking that the theme with all of these and the opportunity to actually get a reframe or a nugget of wisdom or an insight has to start with the willingness to see it differently. And just being willing actually might be enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I have recognized in myself a lot of unwillingness
Mm-hmm.
in the past to see things differently because it felt like that was really unsafe to have a reframe.
Well, it is unsafe to the ego. The ego. So I love that I always feel the need to explain this, but I'm also like, you're not listening to my podcast if you don't know. Okay, so the ego has identity, self-concept. We can use all different terms, but it is rigid for a reason. Ego is edging God out, as some people say, but also it is just a young, scared child that was, heartbroken when we disappointed a parent or a caretaker, or were told, I don't want to play with you at the playground, or whatever it is. So it's just a young, scared part of us that's trying to protect us. So it has brilliantly crafted some version of a hypervigilant way of being in the world, like be a success, but not too successful. As a woman, easy example, be sexy, but not too sexy. Have an opinion, but don't be intimidating or step over people. Do, as I said, like sparkle, but only a little, just enough so that people are pleased, but not overridden. Like it's this impossible juggly thing. And it's so fascinating to me when people tell me things like, oh my God, you must make so much money. Like you're just a money coach. Everybody hires a money coach. And I'm like a racism coach. It's literally the same shit. And I love seeing like money mindset, like anti-racism work. You have to be willing. You have to want to evolve and expand what you think you know. And you cannot let shame come in and hijack the equation, because nobody wants to be racist. Nobody wants to be misogynistic. Nobody wants to be, perpetuating systems of oppression. Nobody in my world, your world, our world. And yet the ego will do that because, like, I genuinely think Trump is the perfect example of that. He is an example of, if it's unsafe inside of you to reflect on who you are, then when someone says you did something wrong, you double down and insist how right you were, and you make them wrong, and it's rigid and it's hard and it's abusive and it's hurt people. And it's like, oh my God, we have to be willing. I love that you said that. And you guys, we originally were like, let's talk about magic mushrooms. And this ties right into that. I feel like my experience, so you turned me on to mushrooms. Thank you for that. Also, you guys, I was like 44 the first time I did a magic mushroom adventure. And as a disclaimer, Kay and I are not doctors. We're not physicians. We're not psychiatrists. We're not psychologists. Don't come for us. Okay, bye. All right. So I feel like, well, I know for sure the first, which also makes me laugh because I feel like I heard someone saying like once, I need heroic amounts. And I was like, I think that was me. I think you were like, yeah, you're a little tense. I remember I was at a retreat place. Don't worry, that no, I was tripping mushrooms, you guys. And I like opened up my little Ziploc baggie that I was like, okay, here we go. And I could hear them as entities in my system. And they were just like begging me, can you just relax? Like it, and I could feel like my system, my energy system, my nervous system being like, I'm trying. And they were like, oh, this is tense. And in a way, I almost in this moment especially can see the association, just a willingness to let go of this highly sophisticated structure of, this is who I am, this is my place in the world, this is what I know to be true. It was like the beginning of, that may be true.
Yes. Mushrooms offered me my first ever real money related reframe. And I only think I was willing to see it because I was in this altered state and was completely not expecting it. I love mushrooms because I think they're really fun and I think they're funny and giggly and it's a light energy. It can be different for all different people, but that had been my experience the first few times I had dabbled. And one time I was with a friend who actually grows his own. It was a beautiful day, and we thought, let's eat a couple and go for a big walk. And we did. And I thought nothing more than that. It was just going to be a fun afternoon in the sun. And I had heard a little bit about some spiritual takes on mushrooms and some people using them to tap into deeper parts of themselves, but I had never had an experience even close to that. And there we were out by the river, looking at things, talking, laughing. And suddenly I heard what I can only describe as a knock at the door. And it felt like I needed to remove myself from the friends for a minute and just go take some space for myself. So I said, hey guys, I'm going to step aside for a second. And I walked away and I stared at a tree. And a voice came in that was speaking to me as I was staring at a tree and was telling me that I needed to let go of a lot of the shame that I was holding on to for what I thought were big moments of face planting in my life. And some of those had been around money, regrets that I hadn't made more by that point in life, regrets that my business wasn't at a different place by that point in my life. And this voice was saying, do you realize that there are some people who wish that they would have taken the risks that you've taken, but because things haven't gone exactly as you hoped them to be, you have been holding on to this shame. And this voice was inviting me to let it go. And I actually didn't realize in my day to day that I was really holding on to that. It was background noise. I guess I thought most people walk around with a lot of tension and insecurity
Wait,
in some ways.
I think that's one of the interesting things about shame in particular. I think it's like this background siren and people aren't, it's almost like, you know how for most of us listening, we're very privileged and we just breathe. And you don't think about being congested until you have a cold or a flu. It's just so normal until you're like, oh shit, this could be different. And I think that's the shame is so insidious because people just think it's true. I should be further along in my business. I should have more money, right? I just there's no question.
Absolutely. And by this age, things should be different. And then there's, of course, your brain then looks for the cultural confirmation. Like, wow, look at all these people who are my age who do have so much more. All these.
Does it have to look? I don't know. Like, does it even have to look? It's like we have evidence, especially with social media, which I love, you guys, but like in 5 minutes, we can all literally compare ourselves to legitimately 100 people in under 5 minutes. We can see their pictures, listen to their voice, watch their videos. When else on the planet has that, like, people used to live in a town and if you found a new person once a month, that was exciting. And now, like, you can get on your phone, I get on my phone, and if we want, our egos can compare us to literally 100 other people around the world just so that we can confirm that we are not there yet, good enough, where we, air quotes, should be.
Yes. And then because shame makes us want to hide, we avoid these subjects both in our minds, in conversations with others. And so we are tiptoeing around different parts of our lives. And in this particular moment, this voice was saying, how about you look at these moments of face planting as huge moments of you taking risk in the direction that you wanted to go, and how that's actually this beautiful part of who you are. And I don't know who this voice was. It sounded like my voice, but she was very, very pushy. She was really wanting me to see things differently. And I walked back. There was a moment where she was done speaking, and I walked back to the friends and I said, guys, I just had a weird moment. I got to share this. And I told them what happened. And one friend said, yeah, I think we do all need to be a little bit more compassionate with ourselves. And then we just carried on with the day. Ever since then, when I've enjoyed mushrooms, that voice shows up in some way, shape, or form. It's not always as crystal clear of a message, but she comes in to speak to me or to confirm something or to affirm something. And I think she's a part of me that gets unlocked. But having an opportunity for a reframe, whether it's from a coach, whether it's from a friend, whether it's from a social media post, or whether it's from dabbling with altered mind states, is so intensely valuable.
It's so valuable. The fire alarm has gone off in my building and I'm not moving. I am only on the 5th floor and my building has a hobby of doing this and it's broad daylight. So I just safety first, you guys, but just so you know, in case of an actual situation, I can make my way downstairs from a couple of exits. So we're not leaving. It just feels like the universe is underlining what you said, Kay. It's totally you. It's totally your voice. She gets unlocked. Our socialization. So that was like my biggest look. So this no body, I'm just going to call it the non-duality intensive by Byron Katie. It's hard. I keep saying my biggest takeaway, and there's so many, you guys, but socialization, fitting in. I don't know about your family, Kay, dear listener, check your family of origin, but just being blissed out and happy and grateful and thriving was not sort of the unspoken, unconscious, this is how we be as humans. In my family, it's worry is love. Prepare for a fearful future, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And I think that's normal. We're all direct descendants of people who survived famines and enslaving people. And like, we're all direct descendants wherever you are on the planet. We're all direct descendants of people who survived shocking wars and situations. So it makes sense that they worry, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, that's, I think my biggest takeaway was I realized, okay, so I'm totally going to go here. I was like, I'll have to only talk about it in the boom boom room. And now I'm like, hey, ready? Take a second, listeners, you too, everybody, settle in. Now think for a second, fire alarm off, yay. Do you remember your first memory? Like your first conscious memory? Some people remember being born. I'm not one of them, but most of us, like my first memory was my mom and my dad in a fight. And my dad was like screaming at my mom was screaming at him. And like, if it makes sense, I mean, I guess that makes sense, but like my first memory is yelling at them to stop fighting. And I think it's so fascinating, in particular in the context of this, because it's like, what brought me from sort of unconscious human form? What have I carried with me for decades as like my first memory? And it's ultimately like being a peacemaker and people who I adore don't like each other. So my point is it wasn't peaceful. So it's like, if we just extract messages that my little 2.5-year-old brain probably was just laying down the foundation, you know, people fight, love is hard, this is scary. Like these are the messages, not even messages. I just feel like that's the foundation that I built a world on. And it's like, oh, I have to / get to unlearn this again and again. But you can see how it transfers to money so easily. So many people, it's so hard to make money. It's hard to make it work. It's scary. So few of us, like the very first memory is peace and love and joy. And actually, ironically, in a meditation with Joe Dispenza, love his books, didn't enjoy the in-person event. You've heard that story, y'all. Here's the short version. I think his ego's highly active and I am obsessed with his books and what he teaches, but at a 7-day event, I was not delighted. But I had my very, 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 very first memory popped up during a meditation at one of his events. It was like, so to me, it was so sweet. It was so sweet. My mom was like changing my diaper and I like smiled at her and she like went crazy. And so I'm like, my very, very, very first memory is love and connection. But I didn't remember that until I was like 42. Otherwise, the memory that I played with in therapy and everything was like this unhappy, horrible scene. And I'm like, oh, of course. I learned what it is to be human or be in my family. There's struggle, there's fight. And every time I talk to people, like, was your first memory super peaceful, loving? And if you're not willing to share, that's cool.
I I have a hard time even accessing one.
Yeah. it takes time to settle in. And I feel like 80% of the people who I check in with, the first memory is not joy filled, and that's okay. It makes sense as far as like neurologically, you know, it was more important for our brains to remember the poisonous berry than it was important for our brain to remember the berry that tastes yummy. Like the brain is wired with the negativity bias to like what could kill us, what could be a problem. So it makes sense that most people first memory when they really go to it, it's like, it's not the most glorious. It's like, yes, because the brain is like, oh, how do we protect this? How do we not? But I'm also like, so very few of us were cultivated to believe the more you shine, the better. The more you receive love and support, the more you have to give. You don't have to earn love. Like those are not the messages that most of us like. And, you know, my parents never told me you have to earn love, but they certainly wanted to raise a citizen that contributed to humanity. So they weren't like, just eat ice cream and do nothing. We'll pay for everything. You don't have to go to school. Don't worry about being polite. That's not how they raised me because they aren't. I mean, they're crazy, but like, and it's like, oh, okay. So I love that you specifically hear a voice. It's a you. And I love because I watched, what is it called? The Fantastic Fungi. I know we both watched that documentary. Will you share your favorite takeaway from the documentary? Y'all can find it literally on YouTube. Fantastic Fungi.
I love the theory that humans across time, our evolution has been supported by eating magic mushrooms. That the third evolution of our brain, and I learned this recently, we have the reptilian brain, and then we evolved to have the brain that we share with all mammals. And then we have the brain that just humans have, which is the higher thinking analytical brain. That part, there's a theory in the doc that it developed because humans have been consuming magic mushrooms for millennia. And I thought that was so fascinating. Of course, we can't really prove it, but it affirms something of my personal hypothesis, which are mushrooms have a benevolent agenda. All mushrooms, even culinary mushrooms, that they have this agenda to support the ecosystem with whatever the ecosystem needs. They're there to process things that have died and turn them into soil. They're there to deliver information across the forest. And perhaps they're here to support humanity, to return to who we truly are, love. And I love that hypothesis. And I think that's why I have a great relationship with mushrooms, is because I go into it thinking benevolent. They are good natured and they want the best for us.
You trust it. You trust it. Like you feel the love. You trust when you say benevolent, like you love it, you trust it. And I love, and I know you know this, but listeners, I feel exactly the same way about not just magic mushrooms, but about money, the energy of money. It is benevolent. We think things like this shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have to deal with this. This is not like we are passing our judgment and therefore we miss the message. And you give such a good example, Kay, where it's like, whatever's happening, you're listening. You are listening. Not like I'm being punished, but like what am I hearing from this inner voice? What are the mushrooms telling me? Like you are, and it's so fun. I want to say this, everyone hear me. We throw words around, not the knowledge of the word, the experience. You are listening. So when you're on a journey, you are open-hearted, open-minded. What am I meant to see? What am I meant to learn? And that is the gift that I think, especially when I was calling it big happy money or holy wow money. And now I'm like, the Mun loves just money, you guys. It's just so tricky because when you say money, there's an FTC here in the United States and there's all these rules and laws. And I'm like, I don't want to end up in jail. But also, Martha went to jail. So whatever, all of it to say, like, there are no downsides to life. Someone would cook and clean for me. And I would get my books written. Literally, the energy of money, I believe, just like the mushrooms, like it's here to work with us. And just like magic mushroom, like we have to, we're right back to where we started with what you said about willingness. We cannot force enlightenment. We cannot force our growing. Everybody listen to me. You cannot force more cash. You cannot force your way out of debt. You cannot force your business to grow. And that so much of that has been my work, not just in my business, but with my clients, because I've, the shit works, but like, there was a season where I would say, like, if you do the boom boom room, you'll 3x your business in 90 days. And like, I have all sorts of evidence that that has happened, but also you cannot force it. And it's, whether it's a mushroom journey or doing the work by Byron Katie, which I recommend to everyone always, inquiry, we have to actually have an open mind and an open heart. Cannot force, cannot gaslight ourselves, cannot gaslight the universe by just saying like, okay, the opposite is true, yeah. And I think mushrooms are in particular magical, because I think especially for us type A overachievers, the fuel that we've done to get things done so often has been to force. And then sometimes we say, fuck it, and we take a break. And then we go back to forcing. And when we burn out, we say, fuck it, and take a break. And then we go back to forcing. And finding the fertile center and creating from the executive function of the brain. And I love that. I was enjoying that part of the documentary. I remember when I watched it, I was like, that is a deep suggestion. It's bold what they are saying here. And I'm like, I totally buy it.
I think one thing that has supported me about mushrooms is I've never forced what they want to do with me. And some people go into experiences with any plant medicine with a clear intention. And here's what I want out of it. And you need to teach me and give me clarity here. And perhaps that works, but I find that being more in a friendship, and you wouldn't say to a friend, here's what I need from you, dot, 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 like really putting that friend in a box.
On this timeline, go.
Yes, exactly. By creating openness around what that experience and what even an experience of coaching or a Byron Katie event could give you is a really different way than I initially approached coaching and other growth related activities. But it does require a lot more self-trust.
I'm obsessed with hashtag love, trust, money. It requires so much more trust in ourselves, in life, in our future clients, in whatever is happening is right for me, in our inherent lovability, our inherent worthiness, in our, this is a friendly universe, no matter how it may look. And it's so yummy to me right now. That's it. Like love plus trust equals more money. But I think where people get tripped up, I will include myself in that category when trying to force the equation. And I'm like, no. It has to be sincere, next level self-love, next level love for client, next level love for what we get to do, sincere trust. Then as the lagging indicator, we see more money. And then I think it's very interesting. And you guys know this, how often people who have, piles of money are like, the money doesn't matter. And first of all, I always take umbrage. So I'm like, look, money buys medicine and feeds people. But like the point that I fully get, and I'm also like, how do I market the boom boom room? Explaining like, yes, you'll totally make more money if you work with me, but I don't care. And that only happens when you care much less. Like that's where it's a weird sell, you guys. We're in a new era. It's not marketing 101 where you're supposed to quote have the problem and I'm supposed to say, I'll show you how to make more money and then you pay me for it. And I'm like, yes, but first you have to surrender what you think that's going to look like. First you have to surrender your false belief that that makes you more lovable or better or finally your good sibling or all the shit that I'm naming that's me. I'm not trying to accuse you guys. I'm naming my experience that I also happen to see in every client. But like literally, it's so, I guess basically everybody needs to do mushrooms. It's so new era because it is absolutely not in alignment with what our grandparents, who we love, and our ancestors considered to be success. And I think that's That's a duality that I think people struggle with, where it's like, okay, but we're honoring our parents, our grandparents, our great parent, honoring everything they survived by being where we are and not reenacting their struggles and not reenacting their stories that are not actually factually true in the year of, as we record this, our Lord 2024. Like, so basically more mushrooms for everybody to soften internally.
It's a softening. That's a great way to put it.
That's my experience of it. I think that's why, I don't do them, as you know, like on a regular basis. I'm very grateful for having taken journeys, but my experience is it's exactly a softening. And it's so in the middle of force it versus fuck it energy. It's rooted, it's centered, it's present, it's let me do what I can, but it's not forcing energy and it's not fuck it, this doesn't matter, never mind. It's not that either. It's just a soft, yielding, flowing, trusting, loving self and others energy.
Amazing that we even have access to such a thing.
It really is, especially since systems of oppression tried to get rid of it. Much like, let me bitch about this and then we'll wrap up. I remember losing my mind slash coming to understand, because I love science, but that like systems are not always smart. When I remember learning about breastfeeding and how when they first figured out like pasteurization, all these scientists were, first of all, like my mother wasn't breastfed. She was born in the 50s and like that was a, breastfeed. And like science was like, formula is better. And like, listen, everybody, do whatever is right for you. I am not judging. What I am clear on is apparently all these scientists at that time thought you should pasteurize breast milk. And I'm like, it's so fascinating. So we know better than God. We know better than nature. Why would we pasteurize breast milk? Like, no, pasteurized milk that come from other animals that we're not supposed to be drinking, sure, but not a mother and her baby or someone else's baby. All of it to say, it's amazing mushrooms survived the great pasteurization of the 50s and the 60s. And yet, as you said, of course they did.
Amen. They have their own intelligence.
Okay. Love, trust, money. What comes up for you? Anything at all?
Just because I don't treat myself like shit doesn't mean that I'm in an active self-love practice.
That's a good
And
one.
we may have learned how to not treat ourselves like shit and not beat ourselves up all the time and have some compassion here and there when things go awry, but it's not what you're saying about really, really being with the love component. And that is something that I've identified recently in my journaling, where it's like, oh, the love is an actual practice, not just when something goes wrong or I make a mistake and I'm there for myself. That's not how we love other people. We don't just love them when they make a mistake and we say, it's okay, and then never speak to them until their next mistake.
We would call that mostly neglect. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so that love component, I think I've noticed has been missing lately.
Mm. Well, and that's perfect because when we notice something has been air quotes missing, then it's like perfect. It's on our radar. Energetically, we're attending to like satisfying that hunger, aware that that is part of your self-care, part of all of our self-care, everyone. But
Yes. And I think I've made money the proxy for that. Like
I think most people do.
wanting more. Yes, getting more will fill what is actually the puzzle piece of self-love. And we're like trying to force money to fit that puzzle piece and it's not going in.
It's totally normal. I have done it. I will do it again at some point in my life. I'm positive. I've done it more than once. I see it in every client. I think it's again, it's socialization. It's the whole planet. Money is never about money. Money is always a stand-in. There are definitely some exceptions. Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie come to mind, but as a reminder for everyone, they're happy to like sleep on park benches and be unhoused. So you really don't care when you're there. You're genuinely like, the world provides for me. I'm at home in the world. For those of us who are like, I am not there, that is the challenge, to recognize. And it looks different for everyone. So I coached someone actually earlier today, and like the issue is this client does not currently have 100K cash available. They do, just so we're clear, but not like in one account where they could, in case of crisis, liquidate it in literally 10 minutes. And their brain is making that. And so we like ended up laughing because it's like this person has a life they love. They are in a season where so much is blooming and beautiful and magical. And it's like, yes, the ego will come hijack that shit. And we think it's the circumstance. She's like, if I sign a few more clients and then that, and then I'll relax and be at peace forever. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's not the circumstance. It's our ego hijacking. And like, that's where I also think money, business are really just a Zen practice. To be here now and not in a fearful future or escaping to a fantasy future where we like ourselves more or in a painful past. It is loving as you just described it, loving this moment, not, I like it, but I'll love it a lot better when.
Those aren't the kind of people we would want to be in a relationship with, who are waiting to love us until we are insert whatever you think you need to be.
Younger, thinner, more successful, smarter, and more calm.
All of the above. Yes.
That's what my brain offers. I'm like, how are we going to get younger? This is fascinating. Brain, we are really going to have to work that one over because I'm not really interested in lying about my age. But even if I do, like that doesn't.
Right. Taking out the whiteout in the birth certificate.
Totally.
Like, that's really going to solve it.
No, I'm like, A, I don't want to lie about my age. B, even if I do what you just said, I'm like, the heart is still however many years old it is. The brain is still however many years old. Like, we cannot manipulate this. But my ego is like, hold on, I'm gonna crack this koan. Like, this is not a koan.
True. And I think that we don't have a lot of conversations that actually really are about money that include these really fundamental concepts about our self-relationship.
What a gift you just gave me. Thank you. That is, I think, the value of the Boom Boom Room. I am always amazed and delighted and honored how often clients are like, I can't talk about this anywhere else. I love that I can talk about this here, or I love that this is my space for this. And I do think it's such an interesting, we're supposed to talk about money, be polite, logistics, whatever, talk to your financial planner, and like, do talk to your financial planners, everybody do, and pay your taxes. But like, it's so surface, and it's like an ocean of opportunity to practice love as a verb, as you described so beautifully just now.
Love is a verb.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, you guys, I really hate to wrap it up, but I'm committed to keeping these somewhat short and digestible. Kay will be back. We'll talk more. It's a given. Kay, remind everyone where to find you.
Yay! Come hang out with me on IG at Kath Brooks, KATHBROOKS. Would love to see you there.
I also, if you're listening to this, I want you to watch the documentary, Fantastic Fungi. And I also want you to message me here on YouTube, or I'm most active on Instagram, XOXO Serena Hicks. I'm also on Facebook. Just find me, Serena Hicks. I technically have a professional page that I don't think I use right now. So just find me. I want to know. But yeah, I want to know what your favorite part of Fantastic Fungi is. Mine was the cilial network, the underground connection, and how like a tree can know its baby and how they will reroute nutrients. And I just thought we are that interconnected, and to see it just resonated as such a yes for me. It was like, oh, right. We are all completely connected. So if I am unwell, you are less well. And the better you are, wellness, love, completion, energy, I'm not talking about any so-called status, the better I am, the better we are. Love it. You guys,
Amen.
Thanks for being here. Okay, thank you for being here. I'll see you guys later. Bye. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you loved it, please share it with a friend, subscribe, leave a great review. If you didn't, okie dokes. I still love you. I still mean it.
If you'd like to work together, you can find me at serenahicks.com. Also, any and all of my social profiles, click the link in profile and you'll find information about my 6-month group program. It is my signature 6-month program. It's $3,000 for 6 months of access. It's called the Boom Boom Room, specifically because we will take your current concepts about you and money and we will make them go boom. Also bloom, but it's fun to say boom and it's fun to say boom boom room. Love you, mean it. See you on the internet. Bye.